Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Italy once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So as I've told you in previous Italian reviews, it seems that there are some great craft breweries down there these days, and thankfully quite a few of them are starting to push their beers outside of Italy these days to other places across Europe, and I'm really glad that we're seeing that happen. It's cool to see that more breweries from different countries are kind of exporting a little bit these days. But I've had some really great beers from Italy so far, and it seems to be a little bit of an unwritten rule in Europe actually, that the countries that are very good at winemaking do very well when it comes to their craft beer. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that seems to be quite popular in Italy. I only tried my first example of this beer style from an Italian brewery quite recently, so I'm curious to see how it comes across when it's from another brewery in fact. But from my experience, the Italians tend to like sour beers and also the kind of lighter sessionable kind of things as well. So yeah, always interesting to try some new stuff from Italy, and I'm sure we'll review more Italian stuff over the next little while, and I hope that you guys enjoy these reviews as well. But hopefully this is another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Passo Colmurano, which is in the Marche region, I guess you could say in the central eastern part of Italy. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but we're going to have a look at my first beer from Birrificio Il Mastio, and this particular beer is called the Montelago Litha. It comes in at 5.2% ABV, and this one is a Blanche, or a Witbier as you might call it. I believe Blanche is what they call it in French, and then Witbier is the Dutch name, and this style of course originates in Belgium. But yeah, I reviewed one quite recently from Birrificio dei Castelli, which is from the same region actually, the Marche region. But I think there's quite a wee bit of distance between these two breweries. But yeah, certainly curious that the Witbier is quite a popular style down in Italy. I'm not 100% sure why, but you quite often see that in Italy, beers are released in these big 750ml bottles, and I think it's just because the Italians like to treat beer in the same way that they would wine. You know, it's a sharing drink with your friends. But yeah, curious to see how this one turns out, so let's get cracking with the review then. As always with my reviews though, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Birrificio Il Mastio. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Italian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review, especially if you're watching from Italy, and we will see about reviewing those in the future. But it's always great to hear from you guys, and the support that you show the channel is massively appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Birrificio Il Mastio. So Birrificio Il Mastio are based in Passo Colmurano in the Marche region, which is to the kind of northeast of Rome and also to the south of San Marino. But this brewery was founded back in 2011 by the brothers Sebastiano and Lorenzo Nabisi, who had been homebrewers for around 15 years at the time. So these guys also own the Statale Sei di Ciotta restaurant, Statale 78 to put it in a sort of anglicised form, but this is a pub restaurant, and they opened it back in 2014, and this acts as the brewery's sort of restaurant and tap room if you like. But they also run their own organic farm, and they produce malt for the beer which is grown on the land surrounding the brewery. Apparently they have 72 hectares of land, and they produce about 70% of their own raw ingredients, which is kind of cool. So you are getting very unique beers when it comes to this brewery. But as it stands, they operate a 24 hectolitre brewing system, and it's Lorenzo who is in charge of the brewing side of things, whereas Sebastiano takes care of the business side of the brewery. But the brewery takes its name from the name of the main tower of a medieval castle in Urbisalia, which was an important Roman city apparently, and these days it's considered quite a significant regional cultural centre. But they name all of their beers after the local area, and as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 25 different kinds of beer, and there's quite a few interesting styles in there actually. I do hope that I can try a few more of those at some point in the future. But yeah, that is everything that I can really tell you about Birrificio Il Mastio. in this review. But if you want to learn a little bit more about them, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, that is it for this for the history section. Let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is a Blanche or a Witbier, whatever you want to call it, coming in at 5.2% ABV. It's brewed in collaboration with the Montelago Celtic Festival, which you can see that's listed on the side of the bottle here. But yeah, quite nicely presented. That symbol at the top here, this is the Birrificio Il Mastio symbol. That is also on the bottle cap here as well, which says Mastio Arte Brassicola Birra. So yeah, nicely presented, I have to say. Birra artigianale, of course, is the Italian word for craft beer, in fact. But as I said, this one is a 750 milliliter bottle. This beer was released, I think, in May of 2021 as part of the Tillfällig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden. I believe I paid 70 or maybe 80 Swedish kronor for this. Let's just say 80 because that number seems to stick in my mind a little bit more. So I think I paid about 80 Swedish kronor for this, sorry. That translates to €8, somewhere in the region of a little bit more than £7 sterling. And in American dollars, that's going to be somewhere in the region of like $9, maybe slightly more. But that gives you guys watching across the world a rough idea of the price that we're paying for these things. And I mean, for an import beer in a 750 milliliter bottle, that's not bad. But I have to admit, I am quite curious as to why the import company that are bringing the Italian beers to Sweden import all of the things as 750s, because quite often you can get them as 330s as well. So not sure, but yeah, you don't seem to get too many cans from Italy yet. So maybe when more breweries in Italy start canning their beers, they might do that. But you know, in terms of, you know, when it comes to like food and things like this and wine and stuff, Italy is quite traditional. So I'm not sure how many breweries over there are actually canning their beers. But oddly enough, many craft breweries throughout Europe have canning lines that are made in Italy. So it's a little bit of an odd thing when you come to think of it. I forget the name of the company in Italy that produces all these bottling lines and canning lines and stuff like this. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The Montelago Litha Blanche, 5.2% ABV from Birrificio Il Mastio in Passo Colmurano in Marche in central eastern Italy. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm curious to see what this has in store for us. There we are. Another bottle cap for the collection. But let's get this out and we'll see how we go. So yeah, the last Italian Blanche Witbier that I had was from Birrificio dei Castelli, and it was really nice actually, a very crisp and slightly more bitter and hoppy drinkable beer. So I really enjoyed that, in fact, so I'm curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. But let me just line this up for you so that my OCD is happy. But yeah, a few bits of carbonation just sticking to the side of the glass there, but oddly enough, I washed it right before doing this review. Weird how that happens sometimes. But anyway, as you can see with this beer then, it's poured with a half finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. Yeah, and it's a lovely, I would say, very bright yellow golden colour there, a very bright kind of golden straw. And this is exactly what you would expect from a wit beer, of course. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil. These two things are going to determine the magnitude of the colour of your beer, of course. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in are also going to affect the colour of the beer as well. But yeah, you know, when it comes to a wit beer or a blanche, whatever you want to call it, you would expect this kind of nice bright yellow colour. It's got a good little bit of a natural haze to it as well, and as we've seen from the New England IPAs that we've had in recent times, wheat will play a significant role when it comes to determining the level of haze that you'll find in these beers. But yeah, for a wit beer, nothing particularly out of the ordinary in terms of its appearance, so I think we should have a closer look at the aroma and see how we go. So yeah, let's have a look at this then. Very curious. Oh, this is quite nice. I'm going to say that straight away. This one is quite nice, but I still get the impression this is going to be quite a light, sessionable beer. And you know, Italy is a pretty warm country, so you can kind of understand that. Yeah, but I'm going to say straight away with this one, aroma-wise, there's nothing really out of the ordinary when it comes to this particular beer. Actually, it really smells pretty much as you would expect. So yeah, let's take a look at that then. So on the malty side of things then, let's have a little look at that first. So the malty backbone of this beer is quite nice. You can certainly smell a soft kind of white bready base to it. There's a little bit of bread crust in there, and on top of that you can smell that thicker kind of wheaty character. Now the wheat actually has quite a little bit of banana to it as well, and I think that tends to come more from the yeast actually in this one, but you certainly get a wee bit of the kind of clovey spice, and I do wonder if there's a wee bit of coriander in this one. It's quite common actually, I should say, that they'll put coriander in these wit beers. But this one certainly has a good little bit of a kind of spicy yet quite smooth character to it. But it seems, when you smell the aroma of this one, it really seems that the sort of spicy side of the beer is mixed in with the kind of banana notes that you get out of it. So like I say, the backbone of this beer seems to be a soft white bready character, a little bit of bread crust. You've also got some thicker wheaty notes in there. As we say, you've also got a good little bit of a kind of clovey spice to it. You've also got some nice I do get a little bit of a kind of candy bubblegummy note out of this one as well. There is a little bit of that in this one, and you've also got a kind of how do you say, you also have a little bit of a say what's the word I'm looking for, you also have a little bit of a kind of just that coriander spice to it. So this is interesting. The coriander gives you a little bit of a kind of drier spice than the sort of clovey side of things. I always find the clove spice is a little bit more smooth and things like that. But this beer, this one does smell quite smooth. Like the other one from Birrificio dei Castelli had a little bit of I'm pretty sure it had a little bit of Pilsner malt in it. But you do get one or two little hints of a slightly biscuity note out of this one. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is maybe a little bit of a kind of biscuity malt coming out, biscuity malt in this one as well. But as we say, they're using their own malts a lot of the times in these beers, so it will be very, very unique in fact. So this one will be a very unique wheat beer in that sense, and that's maybe why it was chosen for Systembolager, of course. But yeah, on the malty side of things, malty and adjuncty side, I guess we need to say, it certainly comes across as you would expect from the style, and it's quite a nice example of the style, I would have to say as well. Nice and smooth, and everything sort of passes together quite well, fits together. I need to say, using Swedish words now, det passar tillsammans, men no, it fits together well. Yeah. But yeah, let's look at the hoppy side of the beer then. Hoppy side of things is quite interesting too, and you will notice with this, it seems that the Italians like a little bit of a kind of hoppy character to their beers. You see this with the Italian Pilsners, of course, which are basically slightly more bitter Pilsners, and I do enjoy those actually. You know, the Tipo Pils from Birrificio Italiano. That's a lovely, lovely beer, but you certainly get a wee bit of a kind of spicy character coming out of this one. So at the back of the nose you get a little bit of a smooth earthiness in there. You can smell a wee bit of herbal character as well, but for me the green component is really big and floral. There's a good little bit of spicy character coming out of this one as well. So I do wonder if these guys are growing some of their own hops. Because I know that the Italians produced hops, but I don't know to what extent. You know, they might be using Slovenian hops. Those are from close by. The Czech hops won't be from too far away either. But yeah, this one and the green component, it certainly has just a wee bit of spiciness to it. But to what extent that's coming, you know, from the adjuncty side of the beer, I'm not 100% sure. But I do find that the green component of this one is quite spicy. It almost smells as if this beer has like a little touch of ginger to it or something, which is kind of interesting. But you get, as I say, you get a good little bit of spicy floral aromaticity off of it. There's quite a bright grassy character to it as well. I find it quite zesty, but at the same time you get some of the more leafy green component to it as well. And the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting also. So yeah, it's quite fruity side of it is quite interesting too. So what can we say about that? For me, the fruity side of this beer is quite straight shooting. For me, there's a little bit of an almost like spicy apple kind of thing to it. It's got a good little bit of a kind of more concentrated citrus, like a sort of lemongrassy thing, and you do get a wee bit of a kind of more pungent lemon at the very front of the nose as well. So for me, yeah, lemon and lemongrass, and a wee bit of a slightly spicy apple character for this one. There's maybe, you know, obviously you've got some of the banana notes from the yeast as well, and there's maybe a little bit of dried apricot in there as well. But yeah, this beer smells very, very interesting, in fact, and it does actually smell in a lot of ways quite different from the last one they had. I mean, the Belgian Witbiers, Blanche, whatever you want to call them, it's a style that I'm not overly familiar with actually, but the last one was pretty nice. So I do have high hopes for this one, because I know that the Italians make some very nice drinkable beers actually. So yeah, I think it's about time that we had a taste of this one. So as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them. But I'm very, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So let's get cracking with it then. So this one is the Montelago Litha Blanche, a wit beer coming in at 5.2% ABV from Birrificio Il Mastio in Passo Colmurano in the Marche region in central East Italy, I guess we could say. Slange, skål, cheers, and salute. There we go. Yeah, that is pretty nice actually. Yeah, this one, it does taste different. You know, the wheat and stuff, the character of the wheat and everything is different, but it really does have the same kind of vibe to it that the other one does. It's quite a nice, light, drinkable beer actually. I'm just going to check sediment, because with these beers you do want a little bit of kind of sediment in these, because we should be like that. So we should kind of sort of spin the bottle around a little bit like this and just see. So let me just pour a wee bit more in. Yeah, there is a wee bit more haze to that now, but if we tip the bottle up, yeah, there is a fair wee bit in this. There is a fair wee bit in there. Yeah, let's just pour a wee bit more in. You can see that. You can see that's a little bit more hazy now for sure. But yeah, let's just make sure we've got a reasonable take on this one, because these beers obviously being imported, they'll sit for a little bit and things, so you will get a degree of sedimentation out of them, and you can see that that is a little bit more hazy than it was now. So let's just take another look at that. Yeah, a little bit kind of thicker and smoother if you like, but still, for me, quite a light and quite drinkable beer actually. But yeah, I think it goes together pretty nicely, I have to say. So it gets a thumbs up from me. Well done to Birrificio Il Mastio for this one, I should say. So let's just try and break down the flavour of this one for you then and figure it out. So straight away across the middle third of your palate, you can feel that nice, soft, white bready character coming out of this one. At either end of that, you get a nice kind of bread crusty element mixed in with it. So yeah, backbone of the beer is quite smooth and bread crusty, absolutely. So I do like that about the beer for sure, but it does make for a really nice, just smooth, drinkable beer. These wit beers, the Italian wit beers are pretty nice actually. I do wonder though, why is this style so popular in Italy? So if you're watching from Italy and you've got some idea, let me know. But yeah, I like it. So as I say, soft, white bready backbone there. You can feel towards the back of the palate, that's where the kind of spicy notes are coming out. But let's go through this beer the way we always do. We'll focus on the middle third of your palate first. So yeah, backbone of the beer is a soft, white bready character. At either end of that middle third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of a kind of bread crusty build up in there, which I do like. On top of the softer barley malt white bready layer, you can feel the slightly thicker wheaty elements coming out of it, and there's a degree of sweetness in there. In the middle third of your palate, you get the kind of banana-y sweetness from the wheat actually, which I really do like. But sitting on top of that middle layer, you get a wee bit of a kind of biscuity note out of the beer as well, which I can appreciate. I do get a wee bit of a biscuity sweetness in the very middle of the palate with this one. So yeah, it's a wee bit concentrated in the middle of the tongue, but then as you move further out from that, you can feel a little bit of a kind of grainy McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. I'm not sure how good a reference that is for Italians watching this video right enough, but like, yeah, some of these kind of British biscuits that you'll find, McVitie's digestive biscuits, the little bit of kind of sweetness that you get in the middle third of your palate really reminds me of that. But let's focus on the back third of the palate with this one now, and this is where a lot of the complexity, I think, lies in this beer. So on the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, pardon me, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there, so you can feel that nice wee bit of a kind of bread crusty element in there. But then as you go into the back third of your palate, you can feel again barley malt base, the slightly thicker wheaty note there, and the wheat does get a little bit bitier towards the back of the palate, but then you've got the kind of yeasty notes sitting on top of that. So the flavour on the back third of your palate is significantly taller than it is in the middle third of your palate, and that's quite common. So when you go from the back of the beer in this one, you can feel the flavours like this, and it just condenses down and squashes together the further that you go, the further forward that you go into the middle of the tongue there. But yeah, I certainly like how this beer goes about its business in that regard. But yeah, I think it works nicely. But within that kind of, sitting on top of the wheat, and within that kind of yeasty layer of the beer, that's where you get the coriander, that's where you get the kind of clovey part out of the beer. And it actually does have a fair wee bit of spice to it, this one, at the back of the palate. And then put on top of that, you've got the bitiness from the wheat. And you know, you do get a fair wee bit of spice out of this beer, to be honest with you. And that kind of substitutes for the bitterness. This is not too bitter a beer, but we'll come back to that in the mouthfeel. But yeah, quite a spicy one this, and it does get a wee bit drier, I think, the further that you go into the aftertaste, but at the same time, it's very, very smooth. So yeah, I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of things in this beer quite well, actually. So let's focus on the sides of the palate then, and the sort of hoppy and fruity characteristics. So in the back corners of the palate, you definitely get a wee bit of a kind of smoother earthiness out of the beer. As you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you push further forward towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a nice floral, aromatic vibe to it, this beer. And again, I can really appreciate how that goes together. But yeah, nice big sort of floral aromatic character in this one, and as you go round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter, and a little bit lighter and a bit more grassy. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it does have a wee bit of spiciness to the floral notes as well, and that's kind of interesting. Again, I'd be very curious to know what hops they're using, because maybe, I don't know, this region in Italy might be good for hop growing as well, and maybe they're producing some of their own hops, but I do find this one has a little bit of spice to it. So, you know, if we're talking about noble hops, it could be they might have an American hop in here or something like that, or it could be a Czech hop, you know, a bit of Czech Sats actually. But then round the front curve of the palate, it's definitely lighter and grassier, and there is a fair wee bit of zestiness to the grassy character as well, which I do like. But yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up on this, which is quite nice. So I do appreciate that side of this beer as well. So yeah, a little bit of bready build up in there, which I think goes together very, very well. But yeah, I think so. You can feel that in there, and then as you go into the base of that front third of your palate, that's when you do have a wee bit of a kind of spicy note underneath. A wee bit of the clove is there, interestingly enough, but then on top of that you get the smoother white bread and the kind of wheaty note sitting on top of it. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get a nice kind of citrusy, zesty sort of thing, and there's quite a concentrated citrus at the back of that front third of your palate. But as you move further forward, it's certainly got a little bit more of a it's certainly got a little bit more of that, it's certainly got a wee bit more of a kind of dried apricot-y note underneath. but then as you move forward into the kind of front half of that front third of your tongue, there's a nice kind of more, you do get a bit more of a kind of concentrated lemony note. And on the back, you know, in fairness, on that back half of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of a kind of lemongrassy note. But then, yeah, pushing into the front half of that front third of your tongue, yeah, stronger lemony citrusy note out of this one, maybe a sort of spicy apple as well. I think that describes it, and that's, you know, just behind the front curve of the tongue. I feel that slightly spicy apple note is what's mixing with the kind of grassy esters in the beer. So yeah, this one does have a wee bit of zestiness and a good bit of spiciness to it, and I'd say that comes without a real bitterness to the beer, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, it's quite a, as I say, as a wit beer, this one's definitely a bit kind of spicier, but still spicier version than the last one, but still pretty smooth actually. So it gets a thumbs up from me. It's kind of interesting to see how these things vary. But if these guys are producing their own malt, I'd certainly love to try an Italian Pilsner from these guys, and I can't remember if they had that in their range, but hopefully this isn't the last time we have one of their beers here on the channel actually. But I think to round off this review, we should jump on to the mouthfeel now, so let's do that. So yeah, for me this beer, kind of just a little bit below mid-bodied for me, kind of bottom end of mid-bodied probably. Carbonation is quite smooth in this one, but the beer itself comes across as quite clean, and you can feel that there's a good water quality in this one, which I'm quite sensitive to, being Scottish, and of course having lived in Scandinavia for a long time, you can feel that this beer is quite clean. I don't know if that Marche region in Italy maybe has a lot of mountains in it, maybe that's why there's a few breweries there, you know, not 100% sure. But yeah, water quality often decides where a lot of breweries are based, but I think this one goes together very, very well. But yeah, the cleanliness of this beer is quite nice, and it suits the other vibes of the beer. But like I said, this one's got an interesting kind of balance between being quite zesty, being a little bit hoppy and bitter, but also being quite spicy in a sense. And so it's really difficult to pick out exactly what IBU this one would be, but I think it's maybe a 30 or 40 IBU beer. It feels like that, but as I say, it's quite hard to distinguish whether the sort of bitter characteristics you get, whether it's spiciness, whether it's zestiness, or whether it's all, you know, it's from the hops themselves. It's quite difficult to place that, but if we're talking about just that vibe, if you like, that part of the vibe that this beer has, I'd say it comes across as being, you know, 40-ish IBUs, something like that. But the malt base, as we said, is really quite smooth. It does have a degree of sweetness to it as well, and you've got a nice little bit of a kind of spicy character to it as well. So yeah, the malty side of this one is pretty nice. The fruity side of the beer, as I say, is quite zesty. I don't think you could really describe it as oily, to be honest. It's got quite a dried fruity character and quite a zesty type note to it. But overall, it's another really interesting beer, and it's certainly cool to try some wit beers, having not had too many of them. You don't find this style too much outside of Belgium. I don't even know if I've ever reviewed a Swedish wit beer, come to think of, and I don't think I've had any from back home in Scotland either. So as I say, I'm a bit mystified as to why this is such a popular style in Italy, because that's two that have made it up here to Sweden. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen other breweries doing wit beers as well, such as, you know, Del Ducato and things like that. I have seen other Italian wit beers making their way up here. So yeah, kind of interesting. But it might well be that Systembolaget want a wit beer in their range, and Italy is the place to get them. I don't know, because Systembolaget do have these quotas for certain styles and things to put in their assortments, just to keep them varied and stuff like that. So that might be the reason why we're getting so many Italian wit beers actually, and maybe there's an abundance of these throughout different breweries actually. I don't know. But yeah, another little bit of food for thought there, but I think we can round off this review at that. So yeah, this was a nice wit beer, slightly spicier, zestier, a nice balance between sort of spiciness, zestiness, and kind of smoothness as well. I like how this one goes about its business. So thumbs up to Birrificio Il Mastio. This one was the Montelago Litha Blanche, a wit beer at 5.2% ABV from the Marche region of Italy once again. Sláinte, Skål, cheers, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out their social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Birrificio Il Mastio, and do let me know some other Italian beers and breweries that you guys would recommend. Check out these guys, check out my social media, like I said, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Sláinte, Skål, cheers, grazie, and salute.